Welcome to the V2V podcast. This is an episode of the Survivor series that we've been doing for the past couple of months. And in this episode, we are talking to someone who is reaching out to help victims of institutional abuse and or conversion therapy. Today we're talking to Samantha Gerson, who has started a group called UnBroken and is beginning to build this foundation to be able to help people in need who may not be able to find the help on their own. So welcome to the show, Samantha.
Thank you so much for having me.
So what is UnBroken?
So UnBroken is a project that I have been quietly working on for the past 5 years. It's a nonprofit that, as you mentioned, works to help and service survivors of institutional abuse and conversion therapy through therapeutic, vocational, and legal services at no cost to the survivor.
Wow, that's great. So is it being built now, or are services actually available at this point?
It's sort of tricky because services have been ongoing for the past 5 years, but at a very non-professional, maybe paraprofessional level, where I shared my story and survivors would reach out to me, and being that I am a licensed social worker, I would counsel them and advise them, but it certainly wasn't through the nonprofit. But right now we have a full board, we have a few staff, and we're ready to go. We're just waiting on the funding to get our software up and working.
Just so that our listeners know, I will be providing links to the crowdsourcing site, and I would urge that if you have the financial means to donate a little, a lot, anything helps. So we will provide that so that people can actually see for themselves what you're doing. So what specifically got you into doing this? I know that you mentioned you're a social worker, but this isn't necessarily the specific field that a lot of social work aims towards. So how did that kind of come about?
Well, as you said, it's not stereotypically what people think of when they think of social work. I think I kind of fell into social work. No really specific reason. I just like to help people, and I had been through my own stuff, and I wanted to do something to give back. And as I sort of went through college and I worked with different populations, I realized that I really liked learning and working with trauma and trauma populations. And during this period of time, I watched a lot of my friends who I had gone to treatment with sort of go down a bad road. So from there, I did a lot of research, and I looked into survivors of institutional abuse, Jody Hobbs' agency, and taught myself a lot of facts and learned a lot of research and started traveling the country speaking at conferences. And the more I traveled and the more I spoke, the more I realized nobody even knows this is happening. This is a $6 billion privatized industry. It's an epidemic, and people are shocked when I talk about this. And that's sort of what brought this concept to my attention. I realized we not only need education, we need an answer. And so I continued my research, and I realized that other than survivors of institutional abuse run by Jody Hobbs, there's nothing else for survivors. No resources, no counseling, nothing. So my hope is not just to educate, but then also to provide this care for the kids that are coming out of these programs.
Coincidentally, I'm going to be talking with Jody later in the week about SIA and what she's doing, which is pretty cool. I gotten to know her fairly well over the last couple of months, and I really appreciate what she's doing to build awareness of the problem, because, as you mentioned, it's not really something that people talk about for a variety of reasons. The first one being that there's a lot of fear associated with telling people about these kinds of traumatic experiences, because the other person may not, one, believe them or understand what they're talking about or think they're weird or, sadly, not care because they don't have the breadth of experience to understand that something this bad could actually happen to somebody else or it happen to many, many people, thousands. So it's really exciting that you're doing this because it's literally the next step in this kind of process.
It's just the lack of awareness of society. I mean, I recently worked at a children's law center, and I did an educational training for the staff at the law center, and most of them were sitting there with their jaws open, shocked that kind of things still occur today, things that you think ended in the 50s or in the 1800s, and these discredited practices. So not only do these kids come out traumatized and fearful, but can you trust your own beliefs of what happened? Did this really happen to me, or am I making it up, or am I making it worse? It's hard to say. And I think they need to know they're not alone.
Absolutely. And the general public needs to understand that there are so many survivors out there that they're not aware of because, as I said, a lot of times survivors are really reluctant to share this kind of stuff for a variety of reasons. This trauma literally affects like the whole society because of frankly the brainwashing that takes place, the coercion, manipulation, and a lot of times sheer brutality that these kids are put through. They carry that back out into the world, and it comes out in very strange ways because they can no longer operate as if they were under the thumb of the program anymore because now they're free. So, and as these tiers work in a lot of these programs where people level up to different levels of, the best word is like accountability. Like when you're new, you're just a peon, but if you get with the program, you can gain some authority over the other kids, and then you're put in the middle of this coercive position where you kind of must get the other younger children to fall in line, or you're at risk of falling back yourself. Those kinds of systems, they train people to operate in these oppressive environments, but then when they're set free, that doesn't work in society. You can't just order someone to do something and people learn fairly quickly that a lot of these people are coming into these programs really young, like 12, 13 years old.
Yeah.
So they get this false idea, or they're trying to be converted, or all these crazy things that they're subjected to. So it's no wonder that a lot of people need services that you're providing and hope to provide to more and more people.
Absolutely. I think we can hit a large audience, and these youth GLBT youth are 4 times likely to commit suicide, but those who undergo conversion therapy or these kind of discredited practices are now up to 6 times more likely. So to not offer these kind of services is actually traumatic and a crime and an atrocity in and of itself. These services should be long-standing.
Absolutely. There's another area that, it's kind of nice to talk to you generally about this stuff because your only agenda is to help people. But there's this other element, too, where people fall into this idea of, like, good staff, bad staff, which is very, very strange. We actually spoke to a former staff member who really illustrated this point really well about how he was the good guy, he was the nice guy, but while all of this stuff is going on around him, he kind of stood by. And that creates a lot of confusion too, because, complicity is a real word. And if you're doing a job and you're witnessing things that you don't think are right, but you stay there, then you're just as guilty as the person doing it, in a lot of ways. Like, I would urge any staff members or any former staff members who are quote unquote the good guys to really look into your hearts, and if you see things going on, in these environments, to speak up, quit, like make a noise, It's really important that there are adults in the room who actually care about children. It creates further confusion, is what I'm saying, for a lot of these kids, because it becomes difficult to differentiate the person who's actually committing the brutality, so to speak. It just creates a lot of cognitive dissonance, and we'd like to, put a stop to that as well.
Right. And I genuinely think that these teenagers come out and they've been so brainwashed and they have to retrain their brain that it's very understandable that they wouldn't trust a therapist or a lawyer or a counselor. And so I think one of our goals in UnBroken is to not just provide these resources, but make sure that they're specifically trained in trauma-focused care, or that they themselves are survivors and have an understanding of the unique type of abuses that occur in these places.
That's a really good point to make. I think we're going to wrap it up, because we could go on for hours, I'm sure, about all of the ins and outs of, what conversion therapy is, trying to turn gay kids straight or quote bad kids good. I know that you're associated or know in some capacity Dr. Kevin Fall.
Yes.
I did an interview with him a couple weeks ago, and that was really interesting, because he had a quote troubled teen, and he did something that was really amazing. He looked into his own heart and he assessed his own behaviors and realized that he was a troubled parent, and decided to not shuffle his kid away, but to act like a parent and reach out, and in concert with his son came up with a plan in order to better both of their lives, which was pretty fantastic. So I'll also put a link to Dr. Fall's interview in the show notes, along with the link to UnBroken. Yeah, I really thank you for coming on the show and explaining kind of what you're doing, because I think that, as you said, it's unique. There's not a lot of help out there specifically for survivors, and I'm really happy that you're doing this.
Thank you very much. I really enjoyed our conversation, and I hope this in and of itself creates some more awareness.
Thanks, Samantha. Have a good night.
You too. Bye.
Hi, I'm Marcus Parrish, along with Alexi Lindez. We're the hosts of the V2V podcast. This has been an episode of the V2V podcast Survivor Series. Please give us a like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell to stay current on all our content. And as always, thanks for watching.